Thanks everybody for joining us. We definitely see some new faces and we really appreciate you guys coming. This is going to be a very different class because I'm not going to be the one spotlight, not center stage. So I'm going to try to keep my theater kid a little back for this one. It's going to be tough, but I think I can do
You got it.
it.
Believe in you.
And also, this is going to be a very interactive class. This is a class not only really for parents and teachers and practitioners, but it's about our impact on those around us and especially our kids. So we're going to actually ask all the kids to participate. And what I want everybody in the room to do is to really pay attention to how much activity is going on with the kids, what's happening with their systems as we go through this, because they are going to be our metric for how coherent and how regulated our systems are. And so if I'm doing a terrible job teaching, they will let you know. None of your opinions matters. It's them. Okay. So but again, I am Dr. Tad Schexnayder. I am not only a chiropractor, but I'm also a certified addictionologist. And our special guest today is my lovely wife, Caroline Schexnayder, who is also a certified addictionologist. She's a functional nutrition practitioner, but in her previous life, before I got a hold of her, she was
Pre-chat.
a she was a pediatric speech pathology therapist. And so this is really her area to shine. This is where she knows a lot of the developmental stages. And she has helped me so much with my parenting and helping my daughters. And girls, what's my main goal with you two? What is it that I really want? I want happy and healthy. That's right. Now, which one of those goals, which one of those is my job? Happy or healthy? Healthy. Right. Which one is your job? Happy. That's right. Our job is to, first off, make sure that they're healthy. Okay. But secondly, and maybe just as important, is to give them the skill sets so that they can be happy, not only as kids and also where they are, but into adulthood whenever we're not around. So today is about self regulation and co regulation. And does anybody know what self regulation means? Anybody? Anybody at all?
Bueller.
What self regulation really means at its core is the ability to actually feel comfortable within yourself, the ability for you to be centered in who you are. And when our systems are coherent, whenever we are centered in who we are, okay, that radiates or that emanates out of our bodies and it impacts the systems that are around us. And so really self-regulation, and this is what we all want to give our kids, is the ability to ultimately be able to feel at home and enjoy themselves, their lives, and their bodies. But in order to do that, we actually have to have a certain function in our nervous system. So, anything you want to say?
Um, yeah, so this will be self-regulation and how to regulate with another little in your life as a caregiver, aunt, uncle, parent, anything like that, teacher. And we want to like just go ahead and preface like sometimes we have like parent guilt and shame. That is real. That is not the intention of this class. This class is more for just expanding our awareness and then letting it shine when we're able to, but there's a lot more that we'll be going over. So just like take it with, in stride. It's not anything to be
And,
needing to correct or change or anything like that. It's just to spread awareness.
and keep in mind, throughout human history, being yourself, being comfortable in your body and life has not been important. What's been important? Survival, making sure you can get the crops in, making sure the tigers don't eat your babies.
And every
Okay.
generation is different,
Yeah.
and so we build on the generation before, and then like pretty soon our kids will say we did it wrong, they're gonna do it right. It's just the flow of things.
So, number one, we are very lucky that we even can practice this as something
Mhm.
important. And number two, the fact that we were not taught this, the fact that we were not raised this way, it's not a negative statement on you or your parents. It's just the way things have been. So,
And things evolve. So Yep.
So first, again, just pay attention to what's going on in the room right now. Okay, pay attention to how it feels. Pay attention to how you feel in your body. Okay. Now I want you to close your eyes. Okay. And I want you to really try to regulate yourself. Really try. Like tell yourself, I'm regulated. I'm calm. I'm calm. I'm calm. I'm regulated. I'm regulated. Wish it. Tell yourself all the happy things that I'm happy. I'm good. I'm good. Okay. Now stop.
Now we're all worked up.
Pay attention to what it feels like in the room. Pay attention to what it feels like in your body. Now, I want you to just breathe with this. Inhale when it expands, and exhale whenever it contracts.
Harper's telling us. Yeah.
Okay, now, what's different about the room? What's different about your bodies?
She got to it.
Joey, what's different about the room? It's more soft, okay, and peaceful. That's right.
Job.
We cannot lie to ourselves into regulation, into coherence. We can't wish ourselves, we can't affirmation ourselves into it. But as weird as it sounds, it can be just as simple as this. Okay, this is not a mental exercise. This is not your mind leading your body. This is the exact opposite. This is your subconscious mind, which is the body, leading your conscious mind. And let's be honest, the subconscious is in control of the show way more often than the conscious mind. So, one of the things we have to keep in mind when raising our kids or us as practitioners, okay, is that we are the ones that set the tone. Okay. Anybody ever wondered like how does getting triggered work? Right? How can someone vibrate their vocal cords, which vibrates the air, which vibrates your eardrum, and then all of a sudden you have this negative experience? Like, how does that actually work? Well, it's a lot more than just the air vibration. If you were with us for last month's class, the pain paradox, you learned that all of our experiences, in very scientific terms, are brain wiggles. Different parts of our brain oscillating or wiggling together. And if it's coherent in harmony, we will have a positive experience. If those brain wiggles are incoherent or chaotic, we'll have a negative experience. So just like what's happening right here, these are two tuning forks that are at the same frequency. He's hitting one, and the other tuning fork is starting to resonate at the same time. Okay, everything in existence is just frequency. So all of our thoughts, all of our feelings, all of our moods, we are emanating those out of our nervous system. And if someone else is really holding on to that same frequency in their system, we will start to trigger their system also, or vice versa. Now, we typically think of triggering as a negative thing, right? But triggering can be a very positive thing. Wouldn't you like to be triggered into joy,
Laughter.
into bliss, into laughter? That's a thing also. However, we have to recognize, what are we resonating at? What are we experiencing? And only then do we have the possibility or the potential to start resonating at a different frequency and then affecting those around us.
Okay, so co-regulation is through the autonomic lens. So on this side, you see a mom and a baby, but there's also, this is true for all stages of development into teen and young adult. But there's this reciprocity happening. It's the cooing back and forth. It's the baby makes a sound, and then there's a response of some kind. There's eye contact, there's touch, um, and there's proximity too. And so the heart field is emanating, there's coherence. And so essentially, this is the end result of just good coherence. And there's a back and forth pretty regularly. This side is going to be a bit more emotionally disconnected. So you'll see usually in these situations, there might be like touch and holding, but you might feel like there might be a distraction or like maybe a screen or maybe there's not so much bonding. So there's going to be a little bit more repulsion type energy. And these happen to everyone. Like this is just this, both of these are normal and natural. Um, but we want to aim for more emotionally connected, autonomic feeling most of the time. And there's going to be like a lack of reciprocity in general. So this is just kind of like a snapshot of what it feels like. And we all know what that feels like. Even in our friendships, we know what each of those feels like.
So just notice though, whether or not there is a connection or a disconnection, the two systems are resonating together. And that's really what co-regulation is about. It's happening all the time. Mothers and baby systems are so sensitive to each other that whenever a baby's body comes within 20 feet of the mother's body, their hearts will synchronize in less than 1/10 of a second. Okay, that's how powerful this is. And we as an adults, right, we do the same thing. We're not necessarily as hard synchronized with everyone around us, but all of the fields around us affect us, and all of our fields affect all the fields around us also. So one of the things to keep in mind, and again, remember, this has not been important in human history before this. So in order for anyone to learn how to self-regulate, they first must experience positive co-regulation. Okay, so first off, I just want to thank everyone in the room, the adults, because odds are you did not grow up with super regulated adults around you. Again, it wasn't important. You may have, but you would have been the oddity. So for you to be here, for you to be willing to practice and to learn to get your system more regulated so that you can give something that you did not receive, that's like a huge level of giving. That is a very high level of consciousness and love. So I just want to thank all of you for being here and being willing to listen to this and to learn this.
The elephants.
Yeah, the 30%.
Yeah. Huh?
The 30%.
Oh, I don't think we're there yet, are we? Oh, okay. Yes, we are. Okay, so according to the Institute of Child Psychology, apparently it only takes about 30% of the time for a regulated adult to have its positive influence on children before there's like significant trauma. So 30% of the time, like that doesn't feel like a lot, but for some, it actually would be pretty earth shattering to get to 30%. So if we can aim for 30 to 50% of the time being regulated and coherent and able to co-regulate with our people and our littles and our friends, then we're looking at for child development, way less opportunity for trauma or traumatic experiences that then need to be sorted out later in adulthood. So most likely, I don't know, that's for some people not so fortunate, but
Yeah.
for those who choose it, you're doing great.
Yeah, you can mess it up. You can mess
can
it
mess
up
it up
70% of
most
the
of
time.
Life is that way. Like we're juggling a lot of things as nuclear families. Nuclear families, I think we struggle because it's always up to like it's just us. But then if we can get back to the tribal sense, the community sense, and build more community type structures and return to that, where we're kind of, helping other kids, the kids are a part of things, they're around, they're helping, they're assisting, and then you have other adults that are also kind of a part of that. You're looking at way more supported grown-ups that can then do their 30% or 50% or more than that. And so when we can offer that in the community, and that's why we put the elephants up there, they really do a good job fostering and nurturing that concept. So yeah, that's pretty.
Now, regulation is not Zen.
Right.
Having a regulated nervous system does not mean you are in bliss and you are in peace. A regulated nervous system means that your system is coherent and appropriate for the moment. So if you are being chased by a tiger and your nervous system is freaking out, that's coherence. So you don't have to pretend that everything is great. As a matter of fact, when you do that,
Yeah,
you're
it's
actually pulling
confusing.
yourself out of coherence.
And it's
So
confusing and conflicting.
one of the things that we measure here is heart rate variability. And this is a really good measure of coherence. And we can tell how regulated your system is. One of the highest heart rate variability scores I ever got personally since I've been tracking it was I was in a fight with somebody I was in a very close relationship with, and I was just devastated at that moment. So I put on my heart rate variability monitor and I just cried. And I completely was in the pain of being hurt about this fight. And to my surprise, that was one of the highest heart rate variability scores I ever got because my system was totally in the present moment with safety, not pretending that everything was fine. Now, over here, if you're a patient of Organic Living Chiropractic, you know that we measure heart rate variability, and I'll pull up these scores. And what we're going to look at is we're going to look at your parasympathetic and your sympathetic responses. And ideally, we want both of those to be in normal range. If both of those are within normal range, you have the potential to be self-regulated, and you have the potential to co-regulate with those around you. However, if these portions of our nervous system are not within normal ranges, as much as we would like to be regulated and to co-regulate, we don't have the physiological capacity to do so. And that's okay. Just accepting where we are, opening up and asking for help to get to where we want to be, that is the best regulation that we can get. And guess what you're going to need at that point? You're going to need co-regulation at that point. So unfortunately, less than 10% of adults come in like this. 90% of adults in our society come in with both the sympathetic and parasympathetic below normal ranges. So again, remember, this is not personal. There's no guilt. There's no shame. This has not been important. However, if we are going to help humanity move into the next phase of existence where survival is not the main focus, we need to recognize where our systems are and get ourselves to the point where we can participate in that. So if you look over here on this one, we got a sympathetic within normal range and a parasympathetic with below normal range. And what that means, this is actually almost like a textbook view of somebody with very, very intense anxiety and PTSD. Okay, and this means that they've got go mode all the way engaged. However, the ability to heal and repair and to relax, that is lacking. So one of the keys to be self-regulation and co-regulation is safety. If we have safety, and remember, safety is not negotiable. If your body says, I'm safe, then it functions as if it's safe, regardless of what's happening in the environment. If your body says, I'm not safe, it doesn't function in safety, regardless of what's happening in the environment. You cannot convince your body that it's safe. So if we develop and our body says, I'm safe at every one of these developmental levels, again, at least 30% of the time, then we'll be able to move on to the next developmental level and the next, and we'll be able to go through all of that. But if something happens where our body does not register safety, we are going to be developmentally delayed at that level. And again, most adults that come in, over 90%, obviously have some sort of developmental delay because their systems are not registering that they're safe. So what we want to do is we want to recognize that there is no bad expression. Anger, sadness, joy, peace, all of them, depression, hopelessness, all of them have a survival value. And if we're coherent, if we're regulated, then we will be able to experience those when we need them and then move on to something else. However, when we're not regulated, that's when we'll get stuck in some and we will avoid or lose touch with others. So as an infant, the main focus whenever we're developing as an infant is to recognize that you have an expression and that expression has an impact. Whenever babies are born, their brains are completely wired to everything. So they are born into literally unity consciousness. They don't have an experience of a self that is separate from a non-self. It's just all one. And they learn that there is a self by expressing, ah, and then having mom respond, ooh. And that's how they get that reciprocity and prune those neurological pathways to go, wow, I'm a me. There's a me here, and this me has an ability to impact the world around me. Now, when we're a toddler, what you'll hear is no, because we're really developing that I am safe being a me. I am safe expressing this me, and ooh, there's expressions over there. They're safe, but that's not a me. Then, if we can go through both of these, then we get to the kid level. And the kid level is it's safe to have all expressions. Then we get to the teen level. Once we know in our bodies, again, this is not a mental thing, once we know in our bodies that all expressions, all experiences, all feelings are safe. They may not be pleasant, we may not like them, they may be painful, but there is safety involved with that pain. Then we can get to the teenage years in which we start to learn, oh, wait a minute, you know what? There's a good and a bad expression. There's an expression that's appropriate, ooh, and then there's an expression that's not appropriate. If we can go through that, then we get to the young adult. And the young adult is, oh my gosh, like if I express this way and I improve my expression, I get an improved outcome. Oh, wait a minute. There is a best way to express that gets me truly what I want. And only then, if we go through all of that with safety, very rare, do we get to the mature adult in which we can really go, well, what is my authentic expression? Like, what is really right for who I am as an authentic being? Okay, this one down here comes way later in life, right? But that's not typically how we learn it, right? Especially nowadays. We're like talking to kids as if they're supposed to know who they are. They haven't even gone through the full developmental levels yet. So let's do an exercise. All kids stand up. All adults stand up. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to expand out, stretch, 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 stretch. And then we want to scrunch in. Squeeze, 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 squeeze. Come on, Maywood, do this. Stretch out, stretch, 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 and then scrunch in. Squeeze, squeeze, keep squeezing, keep squeezing, keep squeezing, and then stretch out, stretch, 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 and last one, squeeze, 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 squeeze. Okay, now everybody sit down.
Good job.
So what feels different about your body now? It's warm. Is that pleasant? Yeah.
I feel like I can move easier.
There's more movement. Is that pleasant?
Yeah, it was good.
Anybody else?
Joy, what'd you get?
Less tense.
I think you're secretly just trying to get us to work out.
That's
it.
But isn't that funny that you got to less tense by making yourself more tense first? We have this idea that we're supposed to just be able to let go, right? Does that work all the time? No, you have to have different tools to be able to accomplish the same thing in different situations and scenarios.
And kids too really obviously thrive with play and movement. And this really helps activate the vagus nerve, which needs to be toned. And that's how you get the ability to relax, to digest, to heal, to recover, to sleep. So just by stretching your front body like that and then curling in around it and giving yourself the contrast, especially with kids, like you're automatically toning that system and that ability within their own bodies by activating the thing they already want to do anyway, which is move and move and move.
So we had someone, one of our daughter's friends, come over to spend the night, and frankly, I'm shocked at how many kids can't handle sleepovers at this point. There's so much anxiety. Whenever I was a kid, I couldn't wait to get away from home. I was like, I may stay away for weeks, but a lot of my daughter's friends, they can't handle sleepovers because their bodies have so much anxiety. So one of the things that we did for this little girl was something very similar to this. We call it the spaghetti test. And that's where you systematically squeeze every single muscle in your body, and then so that you can actually feel the release. How many times do we want to go to sleep, or we want our kids to go to sleep, but they've got too much energy, and instead of actually being with them where they are, we're fighting it. We're like, hey, you should not be feeling like this. And it's like, no. That's not going to bring coherence. Just like at the very beginning when we all tried to be coherent. No, we actually have to accept where we are and work with that in order to bring in coherence. So sometimes in order to relax, we actually first have to squeeze tighter.
Okay, so this next little section is more about like age appropriateness and what we see happening kind of with the current snapshot of parents and parenting today. This is a little bit of a challenge, but to give a little bit of a structure, 0 to 7 years old is primarily about physical body development. A lot of the focus should be going toward physicality, breathing, touch, and just learning about owies, naming an emotion. So a lot of the strategies I would teach or coach some of the early childhood parents that I had, we would teach whenever we have big feelings or big emotions, it helps just to be able to name it. Because in that little physiological body who's like new to the planet, they don't know what's happening. They feel like their whole body and system is collapsing. So, hey, I see your face going like this or this, and you model back to them
With
what
your
it
physical
is with their body and your expressions, what it looks like, and then naming it just so that they have, oh, there's like a name for what I feel. And then they start to kind of associate that. And then later when it's developmentally appropriate, they can tell you, hey, that I feel disappointed or discouraged or angry, and that's all okay. And it's supposed to fluctuate. It's supposed to go and ebb and flow and things like that. The emotional body starts to develop more in 7 to 14 years old. So we're talking more about expression and more about what it means to feel those things, maybe a little bit more about the why and the meaning that we attach to things. And then 14 to 21 is more the mental development. What we see happen a lot is a lot of these first 3 especially will get flipped. And we see a lot of parents have, or teachers or whatever it is, caregivers, expect to have the mental more activated during the physical development years. And so we hear a lot of
express with your words.
Tell me your words, use your words.
Whenever they're way too young for
But
that
they
to
also
happen.
they haven't had the chance to really develop more meaning attachment. And then what we find ourselves is the adult world starts to teach something they're not ready for. And then we get mixed up into negotiations, questioning at an inappropriate time. So with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-year-olds, you hear a lot of, well, why? And then you hear a lot of adults explaining why. And that is very mental and very stimulating and an incorrect patterning for their own mind, body, and emotional development. And so then that's what the funny little saying is, I don't negotiate with terrorists, but we are kind of making them, And so then 24 to 26 is, you're not even 24 to 26 years old. You haven't even fully completed your prefrontal cortex development. So you're looking at volition, impulse control, executive function, things like that are like higher order thinking isn't even complete until your mid-20s. And so giving the time and space that's needed for each of those brackets is pretty critical. And so the mental body, I think, is probably the thing I see the most being flipped at the wrong time. And so there's ways to kind of course correct that, and we'll go over some of that. But just know that a child's nervous system requires boundaries and limitations, and that's safety to children. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of us interpreted our own parents' parenting to mean like, well, let's do it the opposite. And that's pretty normal and natural. Let's do it the opposite, because that I didn't feel great about it, but you're not supposed to really feel that great about it. That's the point. The point is to go and then learn along the way, do things that you want to do, but then there also needs to be that containment. The nervous system of a developing person needs a limit. You can't just let a little body go into the world and like figure it all out. That is wildly alarming and very creates anxiety. And so I think you guys have heard, there's a really popular book out right now. I think it's like the Generation of Anxiety or something. It's like right now, it's happening. It's anxiety and depression toggling back and forth. So to give kids boundaries is very natural. Like we want to do that, but I see a lot of parents struggle with like, oh, well, I don't want to do that because that's like, I had a boundary and I didn't like it. But the truth is your nervous system really did appreciate it. And along the way, you can give options and some little nuggets of freedom, but it's not the requirement. And so sometimes we'll see kids running the show. That's a good indicator that they don't
parents are dysregulated.
They don't have any limit or boundary to their world. And so they have to go and push against everything to see like, well, how far can I go? I don't know where to stop. No one told me where to stop. And then pretty soon you're getting, some
crazy
mental health
pathological behavior.
Yeah. And then if that keeps going and you continue to go because there was no actual development that formed, then you're looking at entitlement issues, which we see a lot of in our society, and we see a lot of low self-esteem. Low self-esteem and entitlement go hand in hand, but you get into an adult world and you don't know how to navigate it because no one ever told you a limit, and now you have limits, or now the cops are pulling me over and I'm asking him why, and then you get, tickets and maybe some time in jail. You don't know. And then the nervous system still has to wrestle with the unsafety. So the entire time, safety was never built. So the whole point of these phases is to actually decide and how it feels in the system as a child, how to navigate those things before they're all alone with it in the adult world. So what we say is like the kids need to practice while it's safe to practice, and they get feedback and they get uh-ohs and they make mistakes, but guess what? They're still loved, cared for, nurtured, and they found the limit, because when the adult world comes, they're going to have all of those same things. You don't get to bypass them. They're all real world consequences.
So what we want to do is we want to set the boundary small enough for each stage of development. So in that first stage of development, it's just them playing with their bodies in a safe environment. You're not going to go play in the street because that's not safe. But between here and here, you are totally free to play and explore with your body. And then once they get past that first 7 years, then we open it up and go, oh, now it's okay to play and explore with your emotions. Okay, out over here, we're not going to let you go too far, but in here, it's safe to explore and learn and play with your body, safe to learn, explore, play with your emotions, but you're not making any big decisions. You're not having to take care of more than you're capable of taking care of. We've got everything outside of this. And then as they get into the mental realm, that's when we can start getting into philosophy and why things are and what's the best things way. But until they get into those later teenage years, that's just not appropriate for a developing system. And when we try to give them that freedom, we actually inhibit them from developing with safety. And we create an unsafe and incoherent and chaotic system. So boundaries are about safety. They're not about life enjoyment yet. Because again, that's something that we have to be able to choose, and we can only choose that with a fully developed system. So the first thing is we have to be able to be taught self-regulation. Now, this is the challenge because most of us adults are not fully regulated. Okay, we try to run away from our children's pain. Don't want my kid to be disappointed. So I'm going to give them all of this stuff. It's not about that child. That's about you as the
your stuff.
adult. And so by trying to selfishly soothe yourself, you are robbing the developing system to learn how to deal with disappointment, to learn how to deal with physical pain, to learn how to deal with emotional pain, to learn how to deal with mental pain. We cannot help them develop through this if we are trying to get them to avoid feeling bad because we don't want to deal with it. What we end up doing is we end up leaving them, abandoning them, and it is a type of abandonment with their experience. Whenever what our kids and our patients need is they need someone to be with them during that experience in a state of openness, in a state of regulation, in a state of honesty, going, yeah, this sucks, but you know what? It's safe.
And a lot of that's easier than we might think.
Way easier, especially if
Because-
you weren't given that.
Yeah, you just need to literally be present. You don't need to think or rationalize or justify or explain or do any of that. It's your presence that counts because then they're not left alone with a big feeling. And you can literally just be there and make eye contact or hold hands or just breathe, and that's regulating them. And you don't have to solve their problem because they get to do that. If we take those experiences and those big feelings away, then they haven't been initiated through their childhood the way that they need to become more of a helpful citizen in society. So think about that in terms of like, well, I don't want them to suffer. Yeah, okay, but also we don't want to take that opportunity away from them to navigate what it feels like to go through that. Because now they can be with you safely with an adult and know after a few minutes time, it's going to be okay. And everything passes.
Pain is a part of life that we cannot get away from. Okay, suffering, however, is optional. If we don't know how to be with pain in a healthy way, that's what causes suffering. So by trying to avoid our children's pain, our patients' pain, we are actually promoting their suffering. Okay, so again, what we wanted to be doing is we want to be training for success. We want to show these little bodies and our patients' bodies what it is like to be successful, how to be with an experience all the way through. Because if you allow an experience, like anything else in life, it changes. And then you get the next experience, and then you get the next experience. But if you can't allow that experience, if you can't be with that experience, you end up repressing it. And whatever you repress eventually is going to be expressed in a whole different way. Whatever you resist is going to persist.
It'll show up.
So if we do not teach how to and train for success, then at best, we're going to get some guessing. I don't know how to deal with this. And I'm just going to, that creates a lot of anxiety, not knowing. And then at worst, what's going to happen is we're only going to focus on the punishment of failure. Now, despite popular belief, when a child is raised based on punishment for failure, they actually don't learn how to be successful. They learn how to avoid punishment.
And then they get real creative.
Yes, all that creativity goes into how do I avoid a negative, not necessarily how do I decide which negative is worth going through so that I can get the positive on the other side. The grit that we need in life to be able to be successful requires us going through uncomfortable situations. But if all we're taught is how to avoid a negative, well, we're never taught how to be with an uncomfortable situation so that we can be successful on the other side.
And typically, I want to mention this at the teenage level, you're looking at like hopefully some really basic techniques that we'll go over to kind of get through that stage, because that's the time where they kind of want to be left alone, like later at 15, 16, 17, but they still need the tools to be with the problems that they have because they're really big social dilemmas for the very first time. And it's challenging and it's arduous. And sometimes we want to be alone, but not left alone. And we are, but we choose it, but we chose it, but I chose it, you know? So that's the season that we want to really like encourage those self-regulating moments. And we're sprinkling them in today, but there's more that can be done for that. But
And again, the earlier we start with
yeah,
this,
the more
the
it's just
easier
natural.
it's going to be in those later stages of
They'll
development.
just start doing it. Like our kids now, they're so used to this that whenever they hit like a stressful moment, that we hear them just pause and go. And because it's second nature to them, they've actually already learned a big tool and technique for themselves that will help them throughout their entire life. Or if we just say, hey, there's some elevated heat going on, then that automatically just go, right, guys? Yep, y'all are amazing at that. Self-regulated already. Yeah. Okay, so a lot of people don't like this one, but it's here. Because I said. Now we hated that as a kid, right? Who didn't? I don't know.
But this is actually one of the most safety producing phrases a parent can say to especially a child that's developing their physical or their emotional body. They're not at the level where they can understand. So whenever they're pushing and saying why, they're expressing that I'm unregulated, I'm agitated, I'm in pain. So to be able to have that boundary of this is just the way that it is automatically helps their system to go, oh, there's nothing wrong. Somebody else that's more developed has got it under control. Oh, I can just be with my stuff. I don't have to be with something that's too big to figure out right now.
But if you hear that pushback a lot, like why? Well, I wanted to, and like the argument kind of game, the argument isn't typically what it's about, obviously. The because I said is when it's a non-negotiable for you as the adult. That is when it's just, this is so because it is so. I don't need to mentally explain it to you because then you enter into argument, you enter into negotiation, you enter into being, and that's what they're looking for actually. They're looking to see, well, where's my boundary? Where's my limit?
Where am I safe?
If I can negotiate, what does that mean, really? If I can like push past your why and your meaning and your interpretation, then how safe am I? And so some of these things are actual tests to see, but also to see where their worldview ends up. Like where is the limit? I don't know. Do you know? Do you know? I don't know. So a lot of it is just to see where they can continue to go. But sometimes it is just the way that it is. And while we didn't like it, it is security producing because that's it. That's just the way it is because I said so, it's safe.
Another thing that we see, yes.
Versus, like, I can hear my morning saying, but it was never from a place of calm.
Right.
It was from a place of chaos.
Right, but
Yes.
you will never get to the ability to produce calm in your system while you're arguing with this kid.
Well,
So-
you're never both going to be there at the same time,
Yeah,
especially.
you don't need to be regulated to say because I said so. That is, hey, this is where this stops. And if you recognize that you are chaotic, that's your opportunity to start centering your system. But if you're afraid to say because I said so, then this is just going to continue to be an argument and you're never going to even get the chance to regulate yourself to help your child.
It actually becomes elevated.
question.
It elevates really quickly. And then you're most likely, if there's a lot of pushback, it's not at the right developmental age anyway. So you're getting a mental conversation before it's necessary.
Yeah, and in the teenage years, a mental conversation
You're
is
going to have
more
those
appropriate.
for sure. Yeah.
I didn't know if it was okay to say.
Yes.
Sounds like what you're describing is, the way I've heard it operationalized is a permissive parenting.
Right.
Was very damaging.
You got it.
And the other thing that I've heard that I hear you guys saying, I've heard it with different words, and I'm just curious what you think about it, is validating the emotion.
Yes. Yeah.
Not validating the truth of what
Right,
you're
yeah.
saying. Just saying, I can tell you're hurt.
Yes.
I can tell you're scared.
Yes.
I can tell you're, that's a way of being with them. That's
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
the same concept.
Yes.
And in the younger
that's the
years, we
naming it.
want them to know that what they're experiencing, especially during the emotional years, what they're experiencing is normal. Like I've been angry. I know what angry feels like. Whenever I feel angry, it's like this. And then they're with somebody in their experience, not rationalizing it, not trying to understand it, but just to register this is safe. Oh, they've had this too. Oh, okay, there's nothing I have to worry about.
And
Yes.
this is something that we are adamant about in our practice and with our families and everything, but I know you haven't been here before, so I want to touch on it. Especially with our kids, we don't just go into the thought of it, we go into sensation. So we address the actual felt experience of everything big, especially.
When I'm
Not just
angry,
negative,
I feel it
but
here. When I'm
positive too.
depressed, I
Yeah.
feel it
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
And we follow it too. It'll go places and we follow it and keep up with it. And then by the time you're actually done feeling the felt experience, they've actually already processed it because the subconscious needs to process too, not just conscious. So we'll spend so much time here, building concepts and analyzing that we lose the body. And so that's the primary thing that we actually promote is more discussion of the felt experiences. That way they can link it. So, hey, discouraged actually feels here and here, or here and here. Out of control feels like rumbly here, so they start to categorize the whole thing.
And when there's safety, even with things like hopeless, did you know there's a survival value for hopeless? Yeah, it tells you, hey, what you're trying to do or the way you're trying to do it isn't going to work out. So stop wasting your energy. So if we can be at peace with the uncomfortable experience of even hopeless, we can go, hey, I'm just going to put my energy over here. But if we don't have safety with even something like hopeless, then we will either continue on past the point where it's healthy to continue on and we'll hurt ourselves, or we will stop short of something that we could have been successful at and just press through because we don't have a good relationship with these different physiological and somatic experiences.
Yeah, so for that, but because I said it's not so much the overbearing permissive parenting, it would be like when there's a non-negotiable experience, like, no, you can't cross the street like that. Well, why? Well, because I said so, because no. And then when it's developmentally more appropriate, you can go into the why.
Yeah.
So there is a flavor, right, of like when that's appropriate, when it's not appropriate.
And also kids develop at different levels. Some kids do develop a little bit faster and slower. So this is like a generality. So just.
But some people need a little bit of affirmation for the thing they know they want to do, but don't seem to get there. So this is just a little bit of affirmation saying it's okay to do some of those
just
things.
say because I said
Yeah.
so. So the other thing that we see a lot causing agitation and anxiety in kids' body is giving too many choices before they have the developmental capacity to even recognize. If I for instance, I've got a nephew and all he eats is chicken nuggets. Like that's it. And
Yes.
his body is really suffering because he just wants chicken nuggets. Well, I'm sorry. A 5-year-old does not have the mental capacity to know what is healthy for them. You do not give them these choices at an age that they are below being able to operate at. So in the developmental of the physical body, we really recommend no choices. You can give the illusion of choice. Here, this is what we're having for dinner. Would you like to eat the chicken or the peas first? That's the illusion of a
Both are
choice. But in
happening.
reality, in this house, this is what we do. You don't have to figure it out. You're taken care of. You get to fully focus on your experience. Okay.
That's
So
the physical body development.
once we get into more of the emotional body, maybe 1 to 2 choices, right? And just really being curious, hey, what is you like this? Well, what does that feel like? You don't like this? Ooh, what does that feel like? Where is that in your body?
Oftentimes we'll invite them into the experience of the activity, like cooking. Like, what would you like to cook, with us and be part of it,
Right. And then once we get into the mental body, that's, the teenage years, that's when we can really start expanding and helping that person develop the capacity to make good decisions. But before that, it's only going to produce anxiety. So another one that's a really big factor, especially in today's society, is boredom.
Mhm.
Boredom is a very, very important emotional experience. What boredom is basically a blank canvas for creativity. So by trying to save our children from boredom, by trying to occupy them all the time, we are literally robbing them of developing the creativity that they need and are going to need throughout their developing life. So boredom is one of the most important experiences when we're developing our emotional self. So this one is a really, really important one for as parents, for us to say, hey, it's okay to be bored. That's great. I'm curious. I wonder what you're going to end up doing.
Yeah, you
with
make some
this
really cool
boredom.
stuff, don't you? Really cool stuff with your
Yes.
boredom.
We get it in writing. You have
Yes, and that's okay.
And they're supposed to push back. That's okay.
Yeah, their job is to push back to see how safe their boundaries really are.
Right.
Okay. But if we cannot have safety in each one of these stages of development, that's where we develop things like entitlement.
You say that one.
We develop entitlement because we feel unsafe, because we feel terrified at the concept that there are things outside of our control. No one has shown us that it is okay to operate within your sphere. And when we do not have that safety of it's okay to operate within my sphere, then we have to be focused on everything and everyone else, and they owe us something, because hopefully if they'll just do something, then we can let go of this horrific fear that we've been holding for a very, very long time.
And sometimes entitlement looks something as simple as if they ask for something and they don't get it, and there's deep hurt feelings, that's an example of like entitlement, when there's a felt, not just disappointment, right? That's pretty normal. But if there's like hurt feelings and wounding that goes with that, then that tells you something, that there's been an expectation or a quality of something being there that's expected. And when it doesn't arrive,
Extreme of entitlement?
You could definitely look at it that way.
children, I say, don't have that. That's something that you have that develops kind of later because of some kind of nurturing level impact for
Really,
sure.
really, it's something that does not develop. And
Yeah,
then
it's
go
something that
because
got
it's
missed.
not there.
Yeah,
The
something-
absence of it looks like a pathology.
Yeah, something got fundamentally missed and then wasn't like retrievable, I guess. But children don't have the capacity to do that. But that is why it's so important for children to go through that with regulated people. Yeah.
All right, another exercise. Oh, no, we have one more question first.
Big thing, I just had that, when they go on the table for the kids to have an
Yeah.
snack.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm all
It's a
about.
good example. Yeah.
Kids' food, from what I see, is they're always hungry. And they do good stuff, they not the supplements,
Yeah.
Goes through the body and they have energy
Mm.
and show for it. But, I mean, that's a piece of the entitlement, then I'm thinking, well, what, you think it's zero and not snacks, that time.
Right.
Well, and,
So-
food, and
so-
food should not be a reward based or intrinsic reward based thing at all. Like that
So,
should never be a thing. in
One
my
of the
opinion.
things, one of the things,
You should.
but if they're truly in need of food, that's different.
That's different.
But
Yeah.
when they're using food as a form of self-soothing, that needs to be broken now, because that's going to cause a major problem whenever they're an
You
adult.
see a lot of metabolic
So
issues. That way.
one of the things that we do with our kids is whenever, and if you've had little kids, you'll know, you'll leave a restaurant and as you're driving out, the kid's like, I'm hungry. It's like, what?
Like,
So we
what?
started asking, if you were hungry for something other than food, what would
What
it
would it
be?
be?
Would you be hungry to play? Would you be hungry to have a friend? Would you be hungry to do some art? Would you be hungry for what? So you're taking that recognition that they're in want, but you're shifting the focus from what they think they need in order to get safety. And then you're opening up, whoa, wait a minute. I do have this want feeling, but what might I want?
And in our house, we call it one-tea. We're like, oh, well, maybe it's not food because you just ate. So, but it's 1-T-1, And sometimes it was like, play.
I want a hug.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
Because the hunger is actually like a legitimate feeling for more than just food. If we could tune into that. Yeah. And so
But-
typically I would say what you're talking about is a level of connection. So there's some kind of touch or need or connection that probably needs to be happening in that moment instead. Because if that behavior then drives giving food, they've figured something out, but not for their best interest.
And a lot of people, they do feel anxiety in their stomach.
Yeah.
So for a
And they
little
confuse
kid
it.
that hasn't fully developed their body and they don't know what's going on, they just feel something here, and it's
They're like, that's gotta be
that makes
hungry.
sense why you would think that's hunger. Of course.
receptors in your gut
Yes,
and your
yeah.
brain.
You got it. So, and that's why we go to self-medication, and that's why food is
It's a big one, yeah.
one of the 5 major addictions. So, real quick exercise. Everyone stand up, even the kids, everybody stand up. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to do cross crawl. So opposite arm and opposite leg. Okay, we're going to do this for a couple moments. Good. We can sit down while we're doing it. We don't have to stand up if that's too much. Okay, now we've done this. I want you to notice how smooth you can do this, how easy it is. How much do you have to actually think about it and like stop and pay attention and keep your balance?
Is your
Or
brain
is this
glitching?
easy and smooth? Now I want you to be creative. How else could you do a cross crawl, arm and opposite leg? How else could you do it? Get creative. Ooh, we got somebody that's doing it behind them. Nice. How else could we do that? Oh, we've got a twist going on.
work.
Oh, we've got a cross crawl even above our head. That's actually a new one. I've never seen that one. Very nice. Okay.
Oh, nice.
Now go ahead and relax. Okay. Now this is a really good exercise whenever we are struggling to focus. If we're feeling very agitated and it's like I can't keep my focus on something, this cross crawl allows us to activate both sides of our brain, but with the middle portion of our brain. And that middle portion of our brain helps us to filter out unimportant information. So if we're excessively distracted about a problem that we have, it's not just the inability to focus, it may be an excessive hyper focus that we would like to shift. Any type of cross crawl movement is going to help our systems be able to focus appropriately. And again, the more creative that you get with this, the more different parts of your brain that you get to activate. So what we want to do whenever we notice that someone is unregulated, okay, we don't want to just be like, you're all messed up, ha 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 ha. Okay. What we want to do is we want to recognize the level of suffering that that person is in. Okay. It's not bad that they're there because this can be a learning opportunity. But at the same time, if they're deep in suffering and dysregulated, odds are they're not going to be able to come into self-regulation without co-regulation. So to first, number one, start with the infant phase, which is it's all about the parent. So you stop, take a big deep breath, check in with what's going on with you somatically. Okay, do a couple of these exercises. Once you've established that, that may be enough. If they've been struggling with that infant phase, you calm down, you will definitely notice a shift in them. But if it doesn't, maybe they're stuck at the toddler phase. The toddler. And this is where physical connection is very necessary. Now, you want to be careful with this in strangers, okay? You don't just want to go up and grab all the strangers, all right? However, if you are close enough to this person to recognize that physical touch is very, very beneficial. And so Caroline has
I have a couple
something
ideas
that she used to do with toddlers that would help them, whenever they had some developmental disorders.
So for infants, you would want to do touch and cooing, but be very close because they need a little bit more close eye contact. With toddlers, they love using music and touch and closeness. So Joy, can I borrow you?
Up here? You stand right.
So this works wonders for toddlers, especially when they're in the, the twos and the throes of twos and threes, when it's like, geez, nothing will break the stress cycle, the never ending, like, you're like, how do I co-regulate something that's like
thrashing
totally in freak out mode? Because it does happen. What helps the brain is that music stimulates more of the right side of the brain. Language is more left side of the brain. So for a lot of the toddlers, I would see that we're in that mode, especially developmental delay, unfortunately. We would do a song like this. We'll do Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Okay, so it's important that you get contact. So we would do Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And then you make whatever movements you want that connect them to anything that you want. Sometimes anxiety's in the belly. How I wonder what you are, right? And then, but you're linking up with them in such a way that they can feel their body, their existence but they're connected to you and they feel you as their caregiver. And it breaks that cycle. And then something you can model when you're that close to them and it helps sync them up is the breathing aspect. So if they're mid scream and then you just show them, they'll start to mimic you automatically because they want to be soothed too. And then you go back into song, you know, twinkle, twinkle. Let's see, you like this. I mean, it's great for anybody. I wonder.
I asked Caroline to do this before bedtime with me all the time.
Well, now we will, right? And you can do that with any song that's soothing or maybe their favorite song. You can get their stuffy if they have a favorite stuffy and like have them be connected to the thing they really like too. Their little stuffies are their security, you know? So let them take one or two things somewhere because it's a semblance of home, you know? And so let that be part of it too if they're really into that. Yeah, so thanks, Joy. Appreciate you.
Joy, how did that feel? It felt safe and like she's at home,
That's
even
good.
though she's on the super wobbly stool. So it wasn't
And
the
not at home.
environment that made her feel safe. So kids learn best through play. A lot of times with our kids, whenever they're having these big emotions and we will get them to be able to identify where they feel it, then one of the ways that we get them to be a little bit more regulated is we start telling a story about the feeling. Like, where did this feeling come from? Where do you think this came? Can you show me what the feeling looks like? If this feeling wanted to go somewhere, what direction would it go? Okay, so to bring a child back into play allows their system to develop safety, and their ability to learn when they are in play is way, way increased compared to whenever they're in stress. So anytime that we see a child that's really struggling, we want to do the best that we can to actually redirect their system into some type of play. So with a teen, whenever we see them struggling, what the teen really needs is the teen needs to be supported in being able to recognize their own needs. Before the teenage years, they can't recognize what their needs are. That's why we need to be very connected and regulated so we can interpret that and intuit that. But teens need to register that they have different needs, and they're going to need guidance and support, not necessarily straight instructions, but just the guidance to go, hey, do you recognize your behavior right now? What's happening? Like, what are you wanting? Is what you're wanting really going to satisfy you? Where do you want to take this? These are some of the things that I do whenever I want this way. Have you thought about trying it this way? Not necessarily telling them and punishing them if they don't do it the right way, but giving them support and guidance and going through the learning process to how do I identify a need, and then what is the right or wrong expression in order to get that need met. And this one is really important. It is safe to fail.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to try something that doesn't work. There's nothing wrong with that. You cannot learn anything in life if you're avoiding failure, because failure paves the road to success. So we need to have a good, healthy relationship with failure, and that actually gets established in the teenage years.
That's pretty important for neurochemistry as well, because what doesn't work also gets stored, and it is also a dopamine hit. What doesn't work is valuable. So the body and the brain store that as an actual reward, believe it or not.
It can get so bad, we can literally neurologically become addicted to pain and failure.
That does happen sometimes, but luckily, hopefully there's more balance in the household, but sometimes people do gravitate toward that.
And then as a young adult, once we figure out that we have needs and there's good ways of going about that, and then there's bad ways, appropriate, inappropriate, only then can we go, well, what's the best way? How did you go about this? Right? Was it successful? Was it not successful? What would you do next time? How could you make this better? But again, this is only as young adults that we fully have this capacity. And then all the way down at the bottom, the mature adult, that's when we can expect self-regulation. Until the age of 24 or 26, we cannot expect healthy decisions to be made. We're learning how to do that. This is not an expectation that we can have on young people. This is what I'm going to be telling my girls about dating. You date a boy that's younger than 26, just know functionally he's brain damaged. Okay. Don't expect any positive things.
Wait it out.
So,
He's not fully grown. Yeah.
have you ever noticed that whenever someone's really stressed, they're doing this? Okay. There's a reason why. You know why? Because the vagus nerve innervates this portion of our body very, very heavily. Okay, in multiple different ways. And the upper cranial nerves, and especially the vagus nerve, they are more related to our parasympathetic nervous system. So by stimulating this part of our body nice and easy, by having our kids and rubbing this part of their body, having them rub this part of their body
So
over
that
here,
twinkle, twinkle.
over here for the vagal stimulation, the ears, especially if we again want more focus to cross crawl, that allows our system to be able to come back into a regulated, coherent function. And again, this doesn't mean that you're going to like the feeling, doesn't mean that you're going to like the situation, but it means that you will be regulated and fully be able to be present with what you're in so that you don't get stuck there. Either stuck there by always feeling it or stuck there by never feeling it.
I must feel self-regulated whenever I'm at the beach and I'm putting on sunscreen. You know?
That's it. Very regular. Exactly. Well, you know how everyone always stresses out of the beach, right?
Yes.
That's why it's the sunscreen
It's
out.
common.
It's not the water, it's the sunscreen. So one of the simplest things that is so overlooked is breath. Breath is one of the simplest and easiest ways. We got a couple of people yawning right now. Do you know what that is? That is a sign that your body is switching over into parasympathetic. I get this all the time after somebody gets off the adjusting table. They start to yawn and then they'll hide it. And I'm like, no. Let that go. Let your body register that it's safe to breathe. It's very good. That's your body moving closer towards healing.
Yeah, don't
Okay?
be a mouth breather.
Nose
That's why.
breathing is very different neurologically than mouth breathing. Okay, mouth breathing is a stress response. And if we're unconsciously mouth breathing, we are unconsciously telling our brain that our body is not safe.
Same
Okay?
thing with chest and belly.
Belly
So chest breathing
breathing,
is survival. You know, if you're panting, that's animal
breathing way up
essentially.
here, just stopping. Just taking a big deep breath into your belly allows your system to register more safety so that you can come into coherence and start getting into self-regulation. The speed, inhale versus exhale. Okay. So what is this? What? Yeah. Do you think that is peaceful and relaxed, or do you think that is stressed? And you got it. So inhale is much more related to alertness. Okay. Exhale is much more related to being able to calm down and relax. So let's just say I'm driving home right after work and I'm like starting to stop. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all my focus on my inhale. Do a regular exhale, but all the focus on the inhale. The longer the inhale, the more alertness you're going to bring to your system. Okay. And if you're already stressed out, more alertness is not necessarily what you want. And that you would actually focus on more of the exhale. So the longer you draw out the exhale, the more you're going to tone your system down and bring yourself into parasympathetic and more of a relaxed state. Okay. Same with rate. The slower we breathe, even though it can be agitating, it can almost feel like, oh no, this is not enough. If you will hang with it and slow down the breath, you'll be pulling your system back into coherence and back into parasympathetic. Okay. And also where we hold the breath. Okay. So if I hold the breath and inhale, that's going to be me keeping my system ramped up. Okay. And if you're a patient or if you've ever been adjusted by a really good chiropractor, they'll bring your breath, your awareness to your breath. Hey, do you recognize you're holding your breath? Oh, no, I didn't even recognize that. That's a person that is in survival mode, but is almost addicted to it. Okay. And if we hold on the after the exhale, even though it's agitating, even though it feels scary, it allows our system to come into the present moment in a more parasympathetic. Okay, because if you do not have any air in your lungs, but yet you're calming your body down, your body's like, oh, well, that's okay. If you're about to run, your body needs to make sure it's got plenty of air that it can go off of. So it's going to keep the inhale very going towards there. A lot of people, whenever they say, I have trouble breathing, they think that the trouble is on inhale. It's like, I can't get an inhale enough. When in reality, what it is they're not actually exhaling fully. They're not allowing that fullness of the exhale. And when we can calm down, even hold it at the end of exhale for a moment, they'll notice, oh my gosh, my inhale is a lot more full. Now,
So any of these actually in a moment of stress or moments or prolonged moments will switch you from stress mode to relax mode, and your inner state will start to match that exercise essentially. So you can actually switch it over, even if your mind doesn't believe the turmoil, essentially. Your physiological state of any of these will actually calm the entire thing, the whole situation.
now, if you need any extra emphasis to pay attention to your breath a little bit more, okay, when we burn fat, okay, when we lose weight, where does the fat go?
Been trying to figure it out.
Actually, it goes out of our lungs. We exhale it into the air. So
Has
if
been so
you
excited about
cannot focus on your breathing for yourself, if you can't focus on your breathing for your kids, focus on breathing for your waistline. Okay? So what I want everybody to do right now, and you can do this sitting, is I want you to put one hand on the very back of your neck over here and one hand over your heart. Okay, and I want you to breathe with this, and in your mind's eye, I want you to really think and feel, I'm safe. I'm safe. So holding the breath, okay, exhaling, 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 inhaling. Just real quick, hold it. And exhale, exhale, exhale. See if you can exhale so slowly and smoothly that you can make it all the way there. Again, I'm safe. 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 Okay, and then just relax.
Oh, a lot of stillness with the kid.
Now,
Oh,
it's a big difference with the kids now, isn't there? Huh. We've got one very little who's exploring away from mom. Okay, and that means she feels exceptionally safe. Okay, we've got other littles that are just relaxed and playing. Okay, so it doesn't seem like much, but again, this is not a thought. You can use your thoughts to get there. You actually have to do this with your body. All of our thoughts originate from inside of our body first as a electrochemical reaction, which is a feeling. So a lot of us will struggle with, oh, my anxiety is all in my head. Okay, no, that's where you notice it, but it's actually originating in your body. And if you can bring yourself into coherence and regulation and shift the physical sensation, then your thoughts don't have to be driven by that. So the most basic exercise that you can do,
this is my favorite.
and this is a polyvagal exercise, is that you relax, laying down or sitting down, and you hold your eyes to one side.
Not your head, but your eyes.
Just your eyes. And as you do that, you will notice after a little while, depending on how much resistance you have to being regulated, and remember,
how
resistance
stressed
to
you are.
regulation is
Could be how
addicted
stressed
to survival. Okay. After a while, you'll notice that you'll want to yawn, or you'll notice that you'll want to take what's called a double breath, which is, and then all of a sudden you just notice that you have all this more room to go. Okay. Once you hit that, then you switch your eyes to the other side. Okay. Now, whichever side you hit that first with, that's the side you want to start with.
But do both.
And the more and more you do this, the sooner you'll notice that the yawn or double breath comes on. And this is a way that you can measure how resistive is my system to coming out of survival and back into ease.
If you practice this long enough, you'll just consider the exercise and you'll yawn, or you'll relax or take the double breath because you've trained your body.
And
So
that,
it is a trainable thing.
just like being in survival is a trainable thing. Okay. And it's okay to acknowledge, oh my gosh, I've been sitting here for like 3 minutes. Wow, my body must be really stuck in survival. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You cannot get to where you want to be on a roadmap unless you first acknowledge where you are and you're starting from. So it's okay. It's not personal that you're in stress mode and survival mode. It doesn't mean anything negative about you. It's just where your body is. And you go, okay, body, let's do this. What's it going to take for us to come back into ease, into peace, into calm, into this present moment, even if it's not peace and ease? Okay. And if you want to go a little bit farther, okay, you'll do that exact same thing, except you'll do it again with your hand on the back of your neck to stimulate your cranial nerves, and you'll put your hand over your heart to stimulate your vagus nerve. And you do the same thing. Just hold your eyes to one side for a little while. We've already got some yawns going on just talking about this.
You're creating
Again, those are systems that are very readily able to get into peace and ease and coherence. Wow. That's why she's always in survival mode.
holding your brainstem like this, by the way, is creating a sense of safety. That's why you kind of are putting it there. It's holding some of your cranial nerves, but it's also creating safety with your brainstem. That's your survival center.
Because what is more scary, right? Something we can't see from behind us. Oh, I'm safe. Okay, I got me.
All of us, at least at a certain age, been taught the nature of biology versus environment. And some of us probably feel screwed by our biology, right?
Totally.
Everyone's anxious, everyone's histrionic, we're stuck. I mean, this makes it sound like you can pretty much overcome that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we
It
very
depends-
much believe you
it-
can overcome all of that.
It depends on, so it's a spectrum. Okay. And I don't believe in nature versus nurture. I believe in nature and nurture.
Mhm.
Okay. Some of us were dealt really crappy hand, and that's okay. But you know what? If you are dedicated and you are aware and you have a support, you can slowly start to exchange those cards.
Mhm.
Okay. Some of us are going to have to work harder than others, and that's okay. However, those of us that have worked harder, the skill set that we develop in that working hard means that our ability to co-regulate is even more so. That would be ideal.
Mhm.
Now, it's even more than that. Okay. And this is wacky. And we know this from studying Holocaust survivors and their descendants. Okay. When a descendant of someone who went through the struggle of the Holocaust, whenever they go through a healing process, okay, not only does their brain change, but their genetics change. Okay. Now, not only do the genetics of every descendant after them change, but the genetics of their living relatives also changes. So again, the more you practice, the more power you have in co-regulating, the bigger of a positive impact you have the potential to make. If you've ever heard of the wounded healer, okay, most people who were, or I won't say most, a lot of people who were dealt a very bad hand in life, they will actually utilize that as a motivation or inspiration to end up helping others. And most healthcare practitioners are master co-regulators. They may not be master self-regulators. However, whenever they are in healing mode, their ability to impact those around them is much higher than the average person because they have dedicated themselves. Even though they may have started down here, the journey to up here was a very, very impactful one. So yes, it is possible to overcome your nature.
And there's also epigenetics. I don't know if you know about that, where your environment changes your genes. Yeah, so that's an aspect where you choose, you rewire your
None
own
of us are
DNA.
screwed out of
You're
it.
not stuck.
No,
You're
no.
not stuck. Yeah.
Some of us need to come together and work as a team and get support. So we want to thank everybody for joining. We're going to have questions here in just a moment. But again, I want to invite everybody back the second Thursday of every month. We have these community classes. We all need to have support in one way, shape, or form. And so coming together and just being in the same environment with other people that are interested in self-improvement and healing and learning and growing, just sitting in this room is beneficial, much less the information that we are so excited to be able to share with you, and ways that you can make a bigger impact on yourself and others. So please, please, please join us again next month, the second Thursday, and spread the word. Tell everybody that you know we can do this live in person or digitally on Zoom.
Yeah. While y'all are here, we have a workshop coming up. It's May 3rd, I think. And that is exploring the secrets of masculine, feminine energy within ourselves and partnership, friendship, anything like that. So if you guys are wanting to learn more about those principles and how to create healthy communication, healthy dynamics,
Healthy intimacy
come to it.
with it,
Yes.
with yourself and with
Somebody.
with not self.
Bring somebody.
Masculine, feminine is not just male, female.
Right.
Although there's some aspects of that. It's much, much deeper than that, and it's a lens. It's a tool set that we can utilize if we know the codes of it. So also for everyone here today and anybody watching online, either now or in the future, we're offering a free discovery call. Okay, if you're interested in connecting with us, we are going to get you to meet up with Haley, and Haley is our community outreach coordinator. And one of her gifts is that she can help you connect with you in a way to really discover what it is that you truly want. A lot of us are spinning our energy and our wheels trying to get something, not knowing that once we get something, that's not really what we wanted. We were hoping if we got that, then we would get what we wanted. So to really be able to have the support and getting down to what is it that is truly what you want allows you to stop wasting your energy trying to get it in ways that will never work. Now, from that discovery call, if we find out that what you're truly wanting is something that we can help you with, okay, then we're going to offer you a 50% off of your first visit. And on that first visit, we're going to do some of those measurements, like your sympathetic and parasympathetic heart rate variability, thermal and surface EMG, to really get how efficient is your system. Is your system functioning at a very high and capacity of ease, or are you spending a tremendous amount of energy trying to stay the same, not going anywhere, much less closer to what you want? So you can text us or comment with the word ouch for that. But again, going through that discovery call is really going to help you. And again, I want to thank you for joining us. Again, I'm Dr. Tad, and this is Caroline. And we are so honored to be able to be with people of your caliber that are interested in not only how to regulate yourself, but also how to have the biggest impact on those around you. So thank you so much for joining us.
Guys. Thanks, kids.
Any questions? Yes.
When I was looking at all those different stages, like 1 to 7, 7 to 14, and what's appropriate at those ages, what I was thinking to myself was, oh my goodness, just not even anything so much that's what I've experienced.
Right.
And then
Yep.
the end being self-regulation. I was like, will I ever be able to learn how to self-regulate? So it was very encouraging at the end, talking about how people even can change the cards.
Yeah.
Put a lot of energy into it is very encouraging. I also want to say I really appreciate what you said about kids in terms of asking for food. It kind of made something click in my brain when you were talking about that, because I think oftentimes, like I'm like thinking back to when I was a kid, I didn't know how to ask for, like, hey, can this stop happening to me, or could I get this, or could I be nurtured in this way? But what you do know how to say, and what you're usually almost always given when you're a kid across a lot of different situations, is food when you ask for it.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about how, like, oh yeah, when I was a kid and things were really neglectful in certain ways, what I would ask for is food. because I didn't have the words or the understanding to ask for what I
You
asked.
you needed a fundamental thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're an adult, and you start to feel lonely or without, or the same thing.
You go
happens
for
when you're a
food.
Child,
Yes.
you gravitate toward food
Uh-huh.
because your brain has chemically learned that's what will make you feel better or distracted.
Right.
So it's like asking the note under the note or question underneath the hunger.
Yeah.
Is, just thank you for saying that, 'cause
Yeah.
it kind of like was a moment for me.
Well, and that's the important part about the self-reflection part, because you're not stuck in the trauma patterns. And this wasn't really, we didn't focus on trauma, but we acknowledge trauma. We're very trauma informed. So we do acknowledge that the pain is real and there. But you can always recover self. And that's a big part of like what we do here is recover the self and call parts of those of ourselves that we've sent away or never even knew was there. And we call it kind of back into wholeness. So to be asking those questions and to be healing that, and just even doing some of these exercises starts to heal that. And the nervous system actually starts to kind of like come back together and stitches itself up. And then a lot of chronic things start to dissipate because you're healing them. Because you can literally, that's a literal way of going back into time and recovering self and healing it. And then it's like it never happened. Now we still acknowledge that it happened and it was an ouch. We don't want to not acknowledge that. That's more trauma. But you can seal it essentially
Well,
by being
and
with it.
really, it's actually at the highest level of healing. The system is smarter and wiser and more efficient, having learned from that experience. So it's more than it just never happened. The negative
You took all the
aspects
good
of it
stuff.
are not necessarily holding you back, but the positive strengths that you gained through that, even though you would never want to gain them in that way, those positive strengths stay. And then you have the ability to share what you learned with others. And that's really what we need. We need everyone who had to develop through pain. We need them sharing their gifts with others so that others get the gifts and the wisdom without necessarily needing the pain and wounding.
Because we're all going to have all of those feelings and experiences. We all know what that feels like. We just have different circumstances with which they show up. And some are more severe, I would say. But we all have a flavor or taste of them all. So extract the goodness, right? Use all things for good, extract the goodness, find the honey, all of that. And then move forward with that and then healing up the rest. Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Yes, Joy.
Is there anything else that anybody was surprised? Oh, yes.
Have a oh.
Mm-hmm.
Like a time that you can breathe out of your mouth.
Well, sure, when you're stressed, like whenever you're
Or
running.
riding your bike.
Running really, really fast and really long, or riding your bike, that's a perfect
You
time
need to do that,
because your
yeah.
body needs to be in stress mode, right?
And
Because
you
you're
need
working
to-
it really hard. So great question. Yes, there's absolutely a beneficial time
When you want to gulp
to
air.
breathe out of your mouth. There's a beneficial time for everything that exists.
A time and a place.
Good, really good
question.
question. Anybody else? Again, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you all. Have a great evening. Another exciting announcement is that we are in the process of beginning our online community. Our online community is going to be for people who are definitely here in person in Colorado Springs, but wherever you are throughout the world, so that you can be in communication, so that you can be in contact with other like-minded individuals who are here, because health and happiness, they know, are their greatest gift to the world. They know that their own healing is the best way to help those around us, and how to do that in an actual enjoyable way, rather than how much kale can you eat. So there's going to be a lot more information coming out about that.